Ask Reddit by Nastrahan. What's the best example of it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it that you know of? Dude I worked with had 30 years in our trade. Other people from other companies would call him for advice. He was a master of his craft. And he was Ned Flanders nice. He was fired for downloading child porn on his work computer. A lot of it. Over a period of a few months. Even after he was fired, most people assumed he had been caught using company materials to help do service work at his church, or maybe, at worst, smoking weed. He still had a decade before he could retire, and I don't think he has worked in that decade. This happened at my work too. I doubt it's the same person, but it gave me a chill reading yours also. It amazes me that work issued computers are used. The director of financial aid at the college I worked at posted an ad on Craigslist offering scholarship for 6. When he arrived at the apartment, it was the police who were waiting. His wife worked at that college, too. She was pregnant and they had other small children. Different story, same college. A professor rented a room out to a former student and he got busted putting a camera in the dude's shower. 2 counts against him because the guy took a shower with his girlfriend. I'm sorry for that college's PR person. There's a professor of chemical engineering at my uni. He's internationally acclaimed, has a very successful lab, has earned countless awards in his field and as a professor, and he wrote a textbook used by many different universities for their CHEM programs. A few weeks ago he was caught fucking his dog outside the restroom of a state park near the university. I have no fucking idea why. He told police he just does it to let off steam. He's been fired from the uni, his lab disbanded, and basically his whole career thrown away. All to fuck his dog? I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. What? Why question mark? I was convinced this had to be made up, but I was wrong. Hype equals amp. At my old company we produced consumer goods and licensed lots of high-end pop culture brands. On a call with a team representing a very popular and iconic space movie franchise owned by the Mouse, one of our senior partners was sitting through a call on rights or sales numbers or whatever with like 20 people. Thought he was on mute and said something to the effect of, "How much longer do we have to listen to this obese idiot jerk himself off talking about his bees in a how exclamation point." The call was abruptly ended. All follow-ups ignored. Maybe a week or two later we got a letter terminating all current and developing licensing deals for cause citing contract violations, and the company was effectively quietly banned from ever doing business with any brand under that massive Mouse umbrella. That dude lost them hundreds of millions in future business in about 15 seconds. When you first start you're told never to suggest pitching anything owned by the Mouse and then get told a story. The company was the worst job and culture I've ever had. Amazed it stays in business. Calls are like guns. The gun is always loaded, and your audio is always unmuted. Never say anything while muted on a call you wouldn't say openly to the face of everyone present. This reminds me of that guy who sold his old company truck to the used car dealer and ended up seeing it in the news with some terrorists in the Middle East driving it. Mounted guns and everything on that thing with his business and his name painted on the side. Great advertising. He was forced to close shop after because of the bad rep. Sad when you think about it since he didn't deserve it. But great example. I'll never understand how that dude took all the blame for not removing the decal or whatever, while that dealer was somehow supplying the Taliban with vehicles and just skirted away blame free by shrugging and going, "Sorry, we don't know how they got that truck." American Ninja Warrior winner Drew Drexel. After years of training, competing, and coming up short, he finally won in season 11 and became just the 3rd person to ever achieve total victory and win the $1 million prize. Months later, he was charged with child sex crimes. The court case is still ongoing, and he could face years in prison and massive fines. And to state the obvious, he will likely never compete again. Truly, not molesting children was the ultimate obstacle. large government organization I was working for had another related organization added to its portfolio, so as many people as possible from both organizations got together in the foyer of the building. 3k people maybe, as the boss talked about the synergies of the two groups. Makes sense etc etc. There's national news cameras and shit. It's a big deal politically here. Camera pans to the crowd and catches a guy on one of the walkways on the 3rd floor making the machine gun fingers and pretending to shoot thousands of government workers below. Call him former middle management. My father grew up believing he was an honest, hard-working, and loyal man. While he was absolutely a hard-working man, finding out when I was 21 that he had another house, woman and child 20 minutes down the street that he went to on his frequent business trips dispelled the notion that he was honest and loyal. In another life, I would conduct a study, write a book, do a documentary on men who have two separate families. Not just men who cheat, but men who have two separate families. Of all the EDF'd up behavior, this fascinates me to no end. I knew a guy whose father, lawyer, had a family a few miles away. Everyone found out after he dropped dead in his office. My wife's college classmate's husband, airline pilot, had a family in another city. I'm sorry about what he went through, and possibly continue to deal with. A minister in my hometown died of autoerotic asphyxiation. His congregation didn't even hold a service for him. His family disappeared, and within a week it was like he had never existed. That's kind of sad. Of all the problematic sexual tendencies that pastors and priests are known for having, this seems so harmless. Well, not harmless I suppose. My former boss in politics, who was hugely respected within his party, and a secretly recovering alcoholic, got so angry about the opposite party winning the election that he fell off the wagon. And then drunkenly sent an email to what would be his new boss calling him a Mormon sister fucker. He was fired. And went on a bender for some time after that. Ended up having to leave the area and move to the East Coast in order to get work. I used to work for an humanitarian aid non-profit. My old boss was the sweetest, most wholesome, super Christian woman I had ever met. A year after I left that job, I read an article about how she kidnapped 2 kids from an event she worked because she thought the father was a Satanist or something. He was an atheist. I would have never pegged her as that kind of Christian TM. Prince Andrew did a good job of keeping a relatively low public profile for years after his divorce. The work he was assigned to didn't require much TV work. Then, after the Epstein accusations, that interview must have been the most excruciating thing I have ever watched. I imagine he walked away thinking he had done a good job, and yet for everyone that watched it, it was the nail in his coffin. His PR advisor told him not to go on and then quit before it. Andrew's an idiot and thought he'd get carried through by his title. Interview question mark equals 47 FDD 34D 777F. Ashley Simpson and the lip cinching, jig dancing debacle. I remember hearing somewhere, pretty sure a Todd in the Shadows video, it wasn't the SNL incident by itself that killed her career, it was her Orange Bowl halftime show performance shortly afterwards. https://yahoo.be/jlfibine_pm close bracket dart. Like, she could have survived one of those, but not both a few months apart. We had a guy on a super big important call where my boss was speaking and some guy comes off mute in front of 300 people and says, "Don't get why we gotta be on these stupid fucking calls. They're all just talking out their ass anyway. They're just here to say ohhhh look," and it cut off. Way high up guy that was speaking say Darian, guy that was talking trash, finish that sentence for us. What have you got to say? Silence. Come on Darian. Don't be shy, more silence. Okay, moving on. I guess I'd take that over the incidences of accidental on-meeting masturbation and toilet flushing that have gone around. I worked at the same company for 10 years and had an excellent reputation. Some wild stuff went down and all the managers except for me had to be replaced. My reputation was fine at that point. Then we hired this crazy guy who was lying and saying strange things a lot. Then he was sexually inappropriate with a customer. I reported all of this to my boss. This crazy guy made up even bigger and more compelling lies about me. They believed him. I didn't do anything fireable, but they transferred me to a different location. I was told that I needed to shape up to save my job despite 10 years of maximum raises and promotions and glowing feedback. 2 days later, the guy was fired by HR because a customer reported him for sexual harassment. Nobody said a word to me, no apology, nothing. I quit in January. Fuck Office Depot. That's the last straw. I'm going to continue my apparently many year in progress boycott of Office Depot. Ellen DeGeneres. She had a reputation for years of being kind and down to earth. Until the accusations started coming out that she was a real dick to a lot of people and not kind like she portrayed. During COVID, she suffered from having too much space in her property. But my biggest problem with her is how she told the public Mariah Carey was pregnant after knowing she went through, which ultimately ended up being a miscarriage. Edit. Bad thing happened after reveal. I believe there was a cheap jewelry company back in the 80s in the UK whose whole shtick was that its stuff was just as good as the high-end stuff but just cheaper. They had a decent chunk of market share and were on their way to being the largest jewelry store in the UK. Then their CEO has a big meeting with, I want to say, the shareholders, and one of them asks how they keep their stuff so cheap, to which the CEO jokingly remarked, because our gems are all cheap junk or something to that effect. That remark got out to the press out of context and it ruined the company within the year, I believe. Edit. Found the actual comment. We also do cut glass sherry decanters complete with 6 glasses on a silver plated tray that your butler can serve you drinks on. All for £4.95. People say, how can you sell this for such a low price? I say, because it's total crap. 6. Also this about another product. Cheaper than a prawn sandwich from Marks and Spencer's, but I have to say the sandwich will probably last longer than the earrings. The company was called Ratner Group and is now Signet Group. This all happened in 1992. They lost around $500 million in share valuation basically overnight and had to shut down over 300 stores. They bounced back though, and Signet is now the largest distributor of diamond jewelry in the world. Signet owns Zales, Kay, and Jared plus other companies. They are not hurting. Jared, from Subway. Deleted. There was a certain pastor in my town who was secretly the most evil scumbag imaginable. He was in rehab for his severe alcoholism and pretty much the moment he got out he wanted revenge. His wife had left him and moved away, so he drove to Maine to get his revenge. His ex and their son were not home, but his daughter had been visiting them at the time. He murdered her and then shot himself. His daughter was someone I knew from school, so it still haunts me thinking about what happened to her. It also turns out that this dude's first wife fell off a cliff when she was pregnant with his child. Pretty sure he killed her too. Took about 10 minutes, but Colleen Ballinger. I'm not a groomer. I'm just a cute little manic pixie dream girl. Here's a ukulele songer about I'm the real victim. All that evidence is actually lies and rumors. Don't you know that calling me out on my bad behavior actually makes you the toxic one? The backlash on Will Smith for the slap. His and Jada's whole attitudes are pretty whack, and that slap just did it. I don't think they realize how pretentious they come off. That whole red table stuff is cringe. How about that lady who tweeted something racist right before a flight and by the time it landed she was cancelled and fired from her executive job? That took 5 seconds, not 5 minutes. It's got to be a record. Edit. Here's the link: https://amp.theguardian.com/world/2013/deck /22/PR-exec-fire-racist-t-weak-aids-africa-apology. It was about going to Africa and not wanting to get AIDS, with a lol chaser. There was a social media influencer, don't know her name, who was doing quite well with promoting her fitness wear brand. She was even working on deals with companies like Under Armour and Nike, can't remember the exact brands, but definitely the heavy hitters. She was set to move into the $1 million income bracket. Until a single post. She showed a picture of her and her family eating tacos with the following caption: "We missed Taco Tuesday, so we're having racial slur for Mexicans that starts with W. Wednesday." Instantly cancelled by pretty much everyone. And rightfully so. Brand deals shut down immediately. Followers left in droves. Pretty much killed her career in a single post. Had to Google that. Never realized that was even a slur at all in the US. Here in New Zealand, a wetback is a type of fireplace that is plumbed into the hot water cylinder so you can heat it using the wood burner and save money on your power bill. I'll have to keep that in mind when speaking with Americans. I knew a guy who spent 10 years working to the top of his department for a large corporation. One Friday afternoon he decided to show his penis to a girl he had a crush on. He lost his job and doesn't even work in the same industry anymore. It took mere seconds to ruin his career. I know this has been said before, but the utterly embarrassing Fox interview between Jesse Waters and an anti-work mod. I'm pretty sure that was the exact picture of mod most Redditors had in their heads before that interview. My former stepfather. He went from a job that he had for 15 plus years, be monthly bonuses, 1-hour lunches every day, and 3 days off a week, to smoking meth, hoarding junk to tweak on, and stealing anything he could to get more. Edit, wasn't expecting this to blow up, I appreciate the support. Man, I'm sorry you had to have that in your life. Guy I worked with, super niche industry but on the sales side. We're the market leader by a huge margin and pretty much own the market, think infotech networking. Guy I worked with worked his way up from inside sales to president of new projects, acquisitions, mergers, etc. Basically he was the show pony for the company, would go out and wine and dine an existing client base, sweet talk companies into licensing features to us or outright purchasing them, etc. Guy had it made huge money, stock options, golden parachute, the whole 9 yards. Would vacation with the rich and famous in Dubai, Monaco, etc. Downfall was he got greedy and greenlit some projects and single sourced them to his friends and family, and he was involved in the side companies in a consultant facility. We're not talking small deals either, less than $1.3M, but like 40-50 such projects. Ultimately what brought him down was due diligence. Some clerk noticed his name in the wrong spot on some paperwork. That opened a can of worms and got him booted out of the company and blacklisted in the industry. Got him on conflict of interest. He's doing fine though. Guys like that always land on their feet, but nowhere near where he was before. Howard Dean. This is a good one and it's so weird to me in retrospect. He was at least perceived as a serious, capable, albeit underdog, candidate, and then he yelled in a slightly non-standard tone of voice. A lot of past political implosions look weird as fuck in retrospect, and especially in light of Trump riding his 10,000x worse shit straight into the White House. Dean's scream. The Donner Ice stuff for Gary Hart. Dukakis taking a picture in a dumb hat. Colleen Ballinger. Yikes. Her ukulele apology had the Streisand effect. I'd never heard of her till that. Now I know she's a 35-year woman, asking kids for nudes and sending them underwear. When the pandemic first started and everyone was getting used to being on camera, we had one IT person really do it well. It was a senior id meeting and SR meeting with the CEO. She was sitting on her couch in a bikini drinking a beer on camera. It was 10 AM her time. Meanwhile she had about 15 people trying to get in touch and you could see when they did, Her expression was priceless. Elliot Spitzer, who as Attorney General of the state of New York, spent a decade combating corporate crime in New York and earned himself a reputation as the Sheriff of Wall Street, rode that reputation into the governor's mansion and blew it all by hiring prostitutes.